March 14, 2012, my son Thomas lost his battle with the disease of addiction. I now belong to a club that no parent should ever belong to. Do you know the signs? Do you know the trends that children are doing in today's world? Do you know the signs and symptoms? Do you know the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? I want to empower and educate Long Islanders by bringing a force of professionals and how to prevent the disease of addiction. Long Island in Crisis. Good evening. My name is Linda Ventura and welcome to Long Island in Crisis. Long Island in Crisis is a show that is to provide educational support, guidance, and hope for families dealing with the disease of addiction, whether it be a loved one, whoever that may be in your family. I lost my son on March 14, 2012, and I stand in the gap to help anybody struggling with the disease, and especially the family members that their voices often go unheard. The United States is in the midst of an epidemic for opioid and heroin use, with Long Island as its epicenter. It's an unacceptable time in this world. We fought Ebola last year with 1 death happening in the United States. We lose 1.5 people every day on Long Island. My friend Ira puts it this way: 2 jumbo jets crash weekly. That's how many people are lost to the disease of addiction. The CDC in 2013 said it is the largest health epidemic and the largest cause of death, injury death in the United States. And yet, we don't talk about it. We need to get rid of the shame and the stigma that's associated with the disease, because it is a disease. So tonight I have my 2 friends, Claudia Ragney Peters from KPC. She owns KPC. It's a treatment facility in Hauppauge. And Nancy Beckett Lawless, who is the Director of Community Relations, is that? At Seafield. They are 2 women that have been fighting this for treatment, for coverage, they've been fighting this for many years, and it is my great honor to sit here with them and to go to Albany and to fight for all of those who can. So welcome to the show, ladies.
Hey, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. So tonight we're going to cover, I really want to cover, I want to empower parents for the summer. Summer is upon us, and things that we should be looking for. Current trends that are coming out. Dr. Jeff Reynolds, we covered a lot of things last week. But when I speak to parents and they say to me, oh, no problem, my child's only smoking pot and drinking beer. And I didn't know that my son didn't have that shutoff valve, so I know that that opens the door for many other substances to come into their life. However, the pot of today is ridiculous. So, Claudia, can you touch a little bit on that for us?
Sure, Linda. I grew up in the 60s, and the pot that I grew up with was typically 3 to 5% THC. The new on-the-street form of pot is called wax, and it's typically 99% THC. So we are looking at something that's thousands percent more powerful. What they're doing today is they take pot, they put it in glass, then a glass tube, then they fill it with butane, like the same thing you would put in a lighter.
Yeah, okay.
And they let it churn in there.
Which, by the way, is that a poison?
Oh yeah. Would you drink?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's very poisonous, and it causes brain damage in and of itself. So they let it soak in there, then they pour it out into a pot, then they cook away the liquid, and what's left is a yellowy, mustardy colored, waxy substance. They call it dab, they call it wax. So this is the most concentrated form of THC. And what's frightening is that the young people are smoking this in front of their parents. They're smoking it at school, out in the smoking area during lunch break, because they're smoking it in the vape cigarettes, the e-cigarettes. They put in, it doesn't smell, they add a little dab of cherry-flavored nicotine, and nobody realizes what they're doing. The parents think, gee, I'd rather have them smoking a e-cigarette than a regular cigarette, and they don't have a clue. And the kids are getting high in front of them. The scary part of wax, with continued use, what you're looking at is virtually 100% probability of having a psychotic episode.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And auditory and visual hallucinations, complete breaks from reality, this sensory feeling that there's something inside, they rip their skin off. It's a horribly, horribly potent drug. And because kids think it's pot, they think it's safe. Because as we know, we're talking medical marijuana, so there's this social conscience that says pot is really a safe drug, it's a benign drug. It is not. Even,
How addictive is it?
it's very addictive. It's very, very addictive, particularly the strains we're seeing now. As I said, in the 60s, your pot was roughly 5% THC. Then the strains kept getting stronger and stronger. We're looking at 15 and 20%. But when you talk to somebody who is addicted to pot, they will tell you it's the compulsion to continue to use it, despite negative consequences, is as strong as any drug out there. It saps the motivation, it affects memory, it affects concentration, and in treatment, we do urines, and in the urines that we do, there are levels. How much of the active, psychoactive ingredient is in the urine. Okay. So 20 years ago, your average pot smoker that smoked 2 joints a day, okay, would come into the treatment center, and then their level of THC in their urine would be somewhere between 175 and 225.
Okay.
Then as the pot strains got stronger, we were seeing levels climb to 300, 400, 500, which was very high. Now with wax, we're seeing THC levels in the urine between 35 and 50,000.
Oh my.
Claudia, what would the parents need to look for if they thought that their young person, their adolescent, might be using wax?
The e-cigarette. I think that's really the most important thing, because that's how the kids are doing it, getting away with, smoking is illegal under the age of 21, right? Oh, or is it 18?
21.
21. So smoking is illegal. Buying nicotine products is illegal. So having a vape cigarette, e-cigarette, should be not acceptable for parents today.
Because kids say, oh, come on, Ma, it's just pot. Thomas said that to me.
Right?
And I knew that it wasn't, it's not okay.
It's not okay.
It's not okay.
And it really does sap so many good qualities. Kids don't do as well in school. They very unmotivated to get up and get out and get a job, or even to go out and do sports. You see, once a child starts smoking pot, next thing you know, the grades kind of slide, and they're not really interested in sports anymore. They're not interested in the after-school clubs, because we don't know the reason, but it does. It affects the part of the brain that governs motivation, concentration, and memory.
I can just attest to what happened to my son. Was an outstanding lacrosse goalie. And when he first started smoking pot, that was one of the things that he said, I don't feel like playing summer lacrosse. And he played lacrosse always, 12 months out of the year. So when you start to see that happen, I mean,
That's
that has to
huge.
be a cause for alarm. And I would also venture to say that kids that are smoking pot and still participating in sports are going to have a higher level to get hurt.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We also see with pot that it affects the part of the brain that helps them make their decisions. So a kid would say to their parents, I promise you I will never use that. I will never use that. When they're exposed to cigarette smoke, even not just pot, if they're exposed to the cigarette smoke hits the part of their brain that those that would not have promised they would never do anything, all of a sudden will start doing anything. And, we hear for athletes that pot, they'll be out on the field, and it affects the part of the brain that tells them, you have to protect yourself. Something's going to happen. So they don't brace themselves when they're hit, for example, if they're playing football.
Oh, wow.
So it is something that athletes have to really watch, and too many of them are out on the field using pot.
And to educate parents, for parents who check their kids' texts, check their kids' emails, some of the street names for this, so you know what they're talking about, because kids speak a language completely different than what
Absolutely.
we speak. They call it wax, shatter, butter, dabs, honeycomb, Kensington swirl, earwax, and BHO. One little dab of wax packs a kick equal to 15 to 20 joints of pot.
And they are smoking that consistently just through the day when they're in
Yes.
school.
Yes. And because it's been around for 10 years, it's been on the street scene 10 years, we haven't seen it that long here on Long Island, maybe 2-3 years. So we don't even really know what it does long term. We don't have a clue. But what we do know is how pot at these low levels affect people and the detriment it does to our bodies. It's frightening to think in 10 years what we're going to see from regular wax smokers.
You will not have a child that will go on and finish college,
No.
and if they're going
And
to
this-
have brain
damage.
Brain damage.
And the scary part is so many of these psychotic breaks, they don't come back. People talk about ODs, death,
Yeah.
but what about the psychotic breaks where they don't come back? I mean, I've seen 2 of them in my treatment center. That's a scary thing to see a young person have a complete psychotic break secondary to pot. Frightening.
That's frightening.
So vapor cigarettes are not benign, and I think that's a message that we
Yeah.
really want to get out to the parents, because the kids will tell them that there's nothing in it, it's just vapor, but they're adding things to the vapor cigarettes, and parents need to be aware.
They shouldn't test it. Test your child. Don't be afraid to step up and drug test them, especially if they're going out and driving. So never mind the fact that your family member could hurt themselves, because that in and of itself is going to destroy the family. But what if they kill a family driving home? And we read about that all the time. So
God
it's, yeah. Okay, so that's one thing that I know that parents just need to step up and say, no, you're not smoking pot. When you're 21, when you leave this house, our parents used to say that to us, right? As long as you're
Right.
under my roof,
It's my rules.
my rules. Yeah. So would you suggest like a contract with your child? I know Dr. Reynolds and I discussed drug testing your kids, and that can really give you some leverage as far as punishment or consequences, or do you suggest that with people in treatment?
I absolutely believe in contracts. And one of the things that's really important when a young adult comes to treatment, and you set up a contract. And when we do contracts, it's behavioral. And the families need to enforce them. That's so important. So if you have a young adult who maybe has not yet landed in a treatment center, but they're behaving badly at home, I absolutely believe in a behavior contract. And then there's consequences.
Yeah.
If you do this, this is the consequence. If you do that, this is the consequence. Young adults need to understand that every choice has consequences, good consequences, bad consequences.
Absolutely.
And we need to be consistent with our decisions. It can't be, all right, well, you're exhausted today, you don't feel like going toe-to-toe with your kids, so you just let them go. You let them have the beer, you let them smoke the pot. It's not okay. We need to be consistent. Our kids are dying at a remarkably rapid rate here on Long Island.
Absolutely. We're
And we've
losing
got
a
to do
generation.
something.
And we
Losing
keep
a
hearing
generation.
from the young people that are addicted to opiates that they didn't start with an opiate. What they started with was a cigarette, and then a beer, and then pot. And pot led them most often to prescription pain medication. And from there, you probably talked about this last week, but they first began stealing their prescription drugs from their parents. They'd find it in the medicine cabinet. And then when they went to buy them on the street, they found out that the street value for that same pill that they were taking from mom or dad was $30. And they could only do that for a short period of time. And their alternative after that is to go to heroin. Now, I know we used to think of heroin as something that would happen to people and, in the ghettos. And it's not happening to people in the ghettos now. It's happening to people in our own backyards. And they start with heroin. It's $5 a bag. And it's so pure today that they don't have to inject it. They snort it and they smoke it. So it takes away that stigma that they had about it injecting.
Yeah, of injecting it.
And-
or the fear.
Or the fear of
There's a
injecting
big
it.
fear, I would assume. I mean, I can't imagine ever doing that to myself.
And then once they snort it and smoke it, they've crossed that line. They started taking a drug, they crossed that line, and then the friends will tell them that you get a better high if you inject it. And so they go very quickly to injecting.
Yeah, well, that drug, I know for myself, it kidnaps your child, and it leaves a host. It leaves, your child is no longer there. It's a host that insidious disease of addiction takes over, and it brings them to places that they do not want to be.
What
They
I've
didn't
seen-
choose that.
They didn't choose that, and it's really a couple of bad decisions that kids make, and this drug is so powerful. The opiate-based painkillers are so powerful that quite often the switch is turned on after one single use, and they really can't. The compulsion to use is so strong, they just can't not use. The thing that I find so remarkable, I've been doing this work over 30 years, is heroin is different. And as you said, it steals the soul of these kids.
Yeah.
A young adult who's raised in a good family, has got a good moral foundation, a good moral compass, in a 6-month period, goes from experimenting with pain pills to possibly selling themselves or doing other things, in order to support their habit. In a very short period of time, this drug causes young people to keep crossing their own set lines in the sand. Like, I'll do some Vicodin, but I'll never do heroin.
Right.
Then it's, okay, I'll do heroin, but I'll just snort it. All right, well, maybe I'll just smoke it. I'll never shoot it. And before you know it, they're shooting
They're
it.
shooting.
But I would never steal from anyone. Then they're stealing from their family and their friends and maybe dealing. And this happens so rapidly,
So quickly.
so quickly.
So quickly. The
that
descent is so quick.
and it kidnaps the child, and it's frightening. They don't know how to get out.
No, they don't.
Of the cycle.
Because I put it this way, Thomas's best friend was heroin, and it was
Yeah.
his boss.
Yeah.
Told him what to do, when to do it, how to do it, because he had to get his next fix. It was a physical, to watch someone trying to, or not having that next fix, to watch them start to sweat, to be physically, throwing up, their skin crawling. It's painful for them.
It's very painful.
It's
And
very
the scary
painful.
part, an alcoholic, this progression happens over typically decades.
Yeah.
Pot, decades. Cocaine, it's faster. You might see this progression to just complete dismal, profound, horrible consequences over 10 years. In heroin, we're seeing it in 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
Well,
You take a young mind that's not fully developed,
Correct.
and you add substance to it, you're not going to have a good outcome. I don't care what the substance is.
Don't care
You
what-
are not going, a 12 or a 14-year-old should not be smoking cigarettes and drinking beer and smoking pot. And I speak at Seafield, I've spoke all over the state, and I always ask the question to people in treatment. If you could go back and speak to yourself, what age would you be to tell yourself not to do drugs? And the overall age is 12 years old. Addiction strikes any family, any day, does not discriminate. It doesn't, it has nothing to do with good parenting. It's a disease. And we have to, get rid of the stigma and the shame of it. If your child had diabetes, or God forbid cancer, or any of those diseases, you'd be willing to stand up and share that with the general public. Well, your child has a disease. And most families are touched by that disease. I don't think, in a room full of 100 people, 95 of them are going to absolutely know someone.
Linda, the man who started Seafield always used to say, anytime he would speak, and sometimes he spoke to audiences as many as 1,000 people, he would say, every person in this audience, life has been affected by someone who was either addicted to alcohol or drugs. And he said in all the years that he did that, no one ever came up to him and said, no, mine wasn't. And the amazing thing is that we talk about diseases like diabetes and cancer, which are horrible diseases. And those are normal diseases. They affect a lot of families. But you know what? If the statistics I just talked about, that every family is affected by drugs or alcohol, and we don't talk about it, it's normal. Alcoholism and drug addiction is normal, and we're not talking in our families. And I think probably tonight there's some families out there that are sitting alone right now, waiting for the person that they love to come home. They're afraid that they may not come home, and they have absolutely no idea what they can do. And I think if I can offer anything tonight, I just want to offer those families help and let them know that there is always help available.
Help and hope.
Help and hope.
And we will, do you know LICAD's number?
Yeah, 24 hours a day. You can call the Long Island Council for Alcoholism and Other Addictions. Their phone number is 516-747-2606. They have counselors on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They will talk to you. They will set you up with an assessment. They will get you to the right form of treatment. I cannot encourage you enough. If you have a problem, if you have questions regarding addiction, call the Long Island Council. They have been around about 70 years, and
it's a free service.
It's a free service, and you donate what you can afford. If you can't afford, you don't donate anything, and they're there to help you. That's their mission, that's their passion, and they're a finer group of people you're never going to find.
And you can point them they can point you in the direction of 12-step recovery programs also for families. And those programs may take an awful lot to walk in that door that night, because you may find it in your local church, and you may be afraid that someone you know is going to be sitting in there. Well, if someone you know is sitting in a family group because they have someone in their family that's struggling with drug and alcohol, and you are too, you've got another person that you can talk to. It's in everyone's families, and that's what we want to let them know tonight.
Everyone's family. You can find help and hope and just somebody else to talk to about it and not feel alone.
That's right.
The disease looks to isolate.
We're looking at approximately 18 to 20% of the population is addicted, all right? Which means we probably have, anecdotally, another 20% that may not be addicted but might play with drugs or at some point of experimentation. So I think it's reasonable to assume 35% of the population has got questions about a family member using or abusing drugs or alcohol. So for this to be the sweep under the carpet disease is just not okay, because it affects more people than any other disease out there. I mean, and our outcomes, treatment outcomes, are often better than other chronic diseases.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know,
There's hope in recovery, I know that.
I often hear family members say, but I don't know if they have a problem. I'm thinking of a wife that might be sitting home waiting for her husband to come home, and she may say, but I don't know if he has a problem. If someone's use of alcohol or drugs are causing a problem for you, you have a problem, and you need help, and there's help and support for that too. And again, LICAD at that telephone number can point people in the right directions to be able to get their help from free family support groups.
Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, there's
Families Anonymous.
Families Anonymous, and your loved one needs, you need to have your own set of tools in your own toolbox to deal with the person that's struggling with the disease. You can't manage their disease, and you can't cure their disease.
No. You know, so often people think that they did something that caused this person to use drugs and alcohol. And I know that when you go to a 12-step recovery program for families, the first thing you're going to hear is that you didn't cause it, you didn't cure it, but you can learn to cope with it. And you'll get the help that you need by going there.
And that is the truth. You can't cure it. And so many, especially parents, you think you did something wrong. You always think you're doing, because there's no book. There's no book on parenting. So you're going to somehow blame yourself. It is not your fault. It's not your fault. But how you come out of it, you can control. You can't, unfortunately, if we could all cure our kids, there would be a lot of kids still alive on Long Island. That's for sure. So I want to talk also about the new drug that's heading our way for the summer, Flakka.
Flakka. Now, Flakka is frightening. We may have heard over the past few years of bath salts. Well, Flakka is bath salts on crack. It's literally bath salts 100 times stronger.
Okay, stop for a second. We're on commercial. Okay. I was waiting to, because, you know.
Time to make the donuts. Dunkin' Donuts are always fresh. I made the donuts. We make them at least twice every day. Time to make the donuts. Not a few kinds, like supermarket. Made the donuts. Time to make the donuts. But up to 52 varieties. The donuts. Time to make the donuts. I made the donuts. Dunkin' Donuts, up to 52 varieties, fresh day and night. No supermarket can.
Yo, what's up, y'all? This is me, GMC, in the place to be, the greatest MC in history. There will never be an MC greater than me. And right about now, the only place for you to be is with the one and only Madhouse TV. You are the man.
Welcome back, and we're continuing our conversation with Claudia Ragney and Nancy Beckett-Lawless. Where we left off is just some of the new drugs that are on the horizon for Long Island. So, Claudia, Flakka.
Okay, Flakka is the newest drug. It's very big in Florida and moving up the coast very, very quickly. It is basically the same as bath salts, but many, many, many times stronger. It's an amphetamine-type drug, and it's stronger, it's more addictive than previous incarnations of this drug, and with it, it's causing, again, psychotic episodes, delirium. There have been, just in the first 3 months of this year, 275 cases in Florida of hospitalizations secondary to Flakka. We don't really know how to treat it medically. I mean, they're landing in psych units, these kids.
Claudia, they were buying bath salts in convenience stores. Do you know where they're getting the Flakka?
They're buying it over the counter. It is over the counter, because here's what happened. When bath salts was banned by the DEA or whoever did that, okay? So now these convenience stores couldn't sell that. So what the drug manufacturers did, the bootleg drug manufacturers, they change a molecule in it. They add a component, they take out a component, and now they're selling it back over the counter because it's not identical to the thing that was outlawed. So now they're selling it at gas stations, bodegas, convenience stores. And that's how they're getting away with it until the law catches up with this substance. We're going to see Flakka, and this new one out is so much stronger.
So if your child has a psychotic break, they may or may not come back from that.
It's true.
They probably will not be the same person that
That's
they
true.
were, or the person that they could have been without ever trying that.
And in treatment,
And that can happen on one first time use?
On one use. And what the other thing with Flakka is there's violent, aggressive behavior.
Wow.
Violent behavior.
Parents on Long Island are so fastidious with Common Core. 73,000 parents opted their kids out of testing. We're so diligent with immunizations and giving it to them, not giving it to them, all of these things. So I encourage parents to have the same diligence with, don't say it's just a cigarette, it's just alcohol, it's just pot, because it's none of those things.
And don't think because it can be bought in a convenience store that it's
okay.
safe for your kid. It's not.
Well,
And
all the energy drinks too.
that's right. What we're looking at from a biological point of view, the human brain doesn't finish developing till the age of 25. When I talk to real young kids, 10, 11, 12, I tell them, look, children, young adults experiment, and that's fine. You want to experiment, but don't experiment till after you turn 25. At least protect your brain, which is the most valuable asset you've got. Once you're 25, do whatever you want.
The
And what you
chances
find
of addiction go down so dramatically.
significantly after the age of 25.
I know our friend
Yes.
Kim Lauby always, from 6th grade to 8th grade, having their first drink, something like 65% of 8th graders will become addicted
Correct.
just because of where they are in their mental growth.
The earlier a child uses mood-altering substances, the higher the statistical probability of them becoming an addict or an alcoholic.
How the heck did we ever get here? That's just,
Nancy,
I know,
you want to take that, or you want me to start with that?
Well, should we talk about some things that changed last year? Should we talk about,
Well, last year, I know we fought very hard for access to treatment. The governor put in the PSAs in the Combat Heroin website, and that is combatheroin.ny.gov, and that can give you a host of resources too if you're sitting at home and you need a place to go.
Yes.
And that is not just to combat heroin. That is all for all addiction. And you can put in Suffolk County, and it will give you every treatment provider here on Long Island. So a lot of bills were passed last year, and I'm really pleased to say that we were very instrumental in getting that done. Because my son was told, we were told, he needs to fail at outpatient, he's not high enough for treatment. So fortunately, this April 1st, I do believe that we're seeing some change, correct?
some of the changes I think that we're beginning to see in treatment as people are trying to get in treatment is that last year, if you were addicted to opiates, you could not get into a detox or an inpatient rehab because the medical necessity criteria that was set forth by insurance companies would say that you're not going to die when you're in withdrawal from opiate. You don't need to be in an inpatient program. And we're seeing already that that's changing. So now if someone is addicted to heroin, there's a greater likelihood that they're going to be allowed to go to a detox or an inpatient rehab, which is the humane thing to do. If someone came to the hospital in the middle of, in a diabetic coma, they wouldn't be told that they have to go home because they ate brownies that day. And they're in pain, and you treat the pain, and that's what we do when we're helping someone
Well,
detox.
I know that physicians who were in, 2000, when pain became the 5th vital sign?
Yes.
And that's when we started to really create this opioid epidemic.
It came on the heels of, in the 90s, there was somewhat of a brouhaha, like a scandal, about senior citizens in nursing homes not being treated appropriately. They weren't given appropriate palliative care, which is end-of-life pain management. So there was this big push. Laws were passed. The AMA adopted guidelines. JACO, the Joint Commission for the Accreditation of Hospital, adopted guidelines. And it all said basically that pain is now the 5th vital sign. Pain is subjective. The way I experience pain is different than the way Nancy experiences pain and different than the way you experience pain. And that if a patient rates their pain 5 out of 5, they must be treated accordingly. Where in the past, prior to like the late 90s, 2000, prior to that, doctors knew how dangerous opiates were. They knew they were very addicting, and they were very, very hesitant to prescribe them because of the potential ramifications. A lot of this changed when Big Pharma, this big business, and there wasn't real physician education on this. And what happened is we had these guidelines changed on how to treat pain, and the only people training the doctors on pain are the pharmaceutical companies, the drug reps.
Isn't that when also it became, they could show commercials
Yes.
on different, and really
That's exactly
promote
right.
their own drugs?
Drug companies were allowed to
And
do
I
commercials.
do know that they, I'm sure there were luncheons and dinners
Yes.
and trips and all of those things. Now, doctors, I don't believe, want to do harm. There are doctors, and we both know our friend Terry Kroll, who, Seiji Francis, who is out of this country actually, who was a drug dealing medical doctor. And unfortunately, Terry's son, Timmy, lost his battle with the disease of addiction. And Seiji Francis was responsible for prescribing him into Our good friend Avi Israel also lost his son. Two very big advocates in Albany they really got the I-Stop bill passed. So now all prescriptions, you can't doctor shop. Is that the best way to describe that?
It's the best way to describe it. When someone is going to write a prescription for a narcotic medication, they have to check a database and see if that person's name is showing up at another doctor's office for other opiate prescriptions or other narcotics. And that has to be cleared before they can write that prescription. And it has stopped a lot of the doctor shopping.
Now, the thing
And that's
is,
why the uptick in heroin.
well, that's true, because what happens is somebody goes to, when I was young, and if I went to the dentist and got a root canal or a wisdom tooth pulled, I wasn't given pain
90
pills.
Percocets?
I was given nothing. I was told take 2 aspirin.
Right.
You know, actually, or Excedrin or Tylenol. But now they'll give you 90 Percocet. So
Yes.
what happens is, for the non-addict, it goes into the medicine cabinet. But as we know, young people experiment. They experiment with all sorts of things, and we know they experiment with drugs and alcohol. They see it in the medicine cabinet, they're going to try it. The difference is that the nature of opiates, you can become addicted immediately. If you don't become addicted quickly, the nature of the drug, you will become chemically dependent within 2 weeks of daily use. Where a chemically dependent means you will have a withdrawal symptoms when you stop using the drug. So quite often kids who are playing with these drugs and are using them fairly regularly, in a matter of 2 weeks, they're physically dependent. So now when they go to keep buying them, they're very expensive. It goes for approximately $1 a milligram. They can't afford it. An 80 milligram OxyContin is $80. So then they flip over to the cheap heroin. And that's how I believe we got into this crisis, because the huge crisis here is heroin. I mean, all these other drugs are frightening, but heroin is the one that's taking out our
many.
kids at 1.5
Well, I know
per
our-
day in Nassau and Suffolk.
And you know what the thing is too, the narcotic that's sitting in the medicine cabinet is also there for whoever else happens to use the bathroom. So it could be the friends of your kids. It could be a housekeeper
That's
that's
right.
there. It could be a family member that's there.
Do you know, visiting open houses is
Oh,
the
my
number
goodness.
one way white-collar, middle-aged drug addicts get their drugs.
You know, we're talking about the young generation, but the biggest, one of the biggest generation is the 45 to 55
Year-old white male.
year-old white male that
Yes.
is dying quietly in their beds, and it's being attributed to heart attack or whatever.
And it's opiate overdose.
And it's because I know that doctors now, so, you know, we go into their payments being cut dramatically for office visits. So if Nancy and I go to a doctor and we both have back pain, and Dr. Smith says, you need to lose some weight, you need to get back into doing some exercise, I want you to go to physical therapy, you're going to be fine. These are the steps we're going to take. And Nancy goes to see Dr. Jones and comes out with a prescription, I'm going to say, my doctor didn't do anything for me, he's terrible.
Right.
And you're going to go on a website and you're going to log in that this doctor is not a good doctor. It happens all the time. So doctors prescribe the pain medication for a bunch of reasons. Number one is, I do believe when doctors are prescribing pain medication, they're trying to help that person that's in front of them. But they're also aware that if they don't, that person is going to leave their practice and go to another practice, or they're going to log in on one of the social media websites that are out there and rate that doctor low for not keeping them pain-free.
You know, Avi's son had Crohn's disease, which
It's a very painful disease.
very painful disease, and he was a teenager, and he had tremendous pain, and his surgeon, Michael's surgeon, prescribed oxycodone for him, and he became addicted. Once he became addicted, then they said, we can't treat you here anymore. So it was just, it's just horrible. If pediatricians, who are our first children, our children's first doctor, if they had training in how to, not in the whole disease of addiction, but how to spot it, how to intervene in it. So the earliest intervention with the appropriate level of care, we could probably treat more as an office visit in the very early stages. And if we treat any disease in the earliest stages, we're going to have better results.
Absolutely.
So, right?
My frustration when I talk to doctors, when patients come into my treatment center, and my personal specialty is chronic pain, pain management, and chemical dependency. So the addicted chronic pain patient. So I have a lot of conversations with doctors that are misprescribing. And the thing that's startling to me is that good doctors, caring doctors, really don't understand addiction. I mean, I've had doctors say to me, well, if he just took the medicine as prescribed. And I'll say, well, addicts don't do anything as prescribed. That's the nature of the disease.
Correct.
So they can't take it as prescribed. They don't understand addiction. They don't even understand the nature of pain, because any doctor who prescribes short-acting opiates for extended periods of time isn't doing the best by their patient, because short-acting opiates, you get this kind of effect. Strong, it goes like this, which replicates the addiction cycle, where if someone's in chronic pain and needs to be on opiates long-term, they should be titrated up to a level where they are managed and then kept like that. That kind of medication, that kind of pain management can be done via a patch or via long-acting opiates. Short-acting opiates over a period of a month or more destabilizes the brain receptors and can actually create pain. It's like sticking, it's like the gas pedal on a car sticking. The pain signal gets sent out from the brain when the body has actually healed itself. It's called hyperalgesia. So that's my frustration in talking to doctors. These are good doctors, and they do care. But I do think that doctors now, it's really, this is a social issue, that they need to be educated on
And then
addiction.
We have healthcare professionals who, when a young person or any person comes in struggling with the disease, looks down on them.
Yes.
Somehow it's just stop doing it, just, and I guess, I forget who described it as taking a box of laxatives.
That was one of my patients
Yes.
told me. Yes.
And then not being allowed to go to the bathroom.
Correct.
So
he said
how
that's
did-
how strong the cravings are. Yeah.
Yeah. So how can that be free will at that point
It's
in
not
time?
free will.
We're going to go to commercial. We'll be right back.
Bill.
Stretching under sedation or manipulation under anesthesia is a very gentle, very precise procedure to very slowly release any scar tissue that is formed as a result of a traumatic injury. Many people ask, how does this work? Will I get hurt? Will you stretch me too far? We only stretch the body part to its normal range of motion. After completing the post-MUA rehabilitation program, it's very common that our patients say to us, hey, I can play ball with my kid again. Hey, I can bowl again. Hey, I can enjoy hiking again. This is what makes it rewarding to us as practitioners.
Hi, I'm Tom Mealy from Madhouse TV, and when I'm not at the studio, I'm here at the Harrison Law Group. This is my real job. And this January 2015, Brett and I are putting together a show called Legal Straight Talk. It'll be aired on Cablevision as well as here at Madhouse TV. You need to tune in. This information that we're going to be giving the public is the real deal. It's all about what you should do, what you shouldn't do. So tune in this January 2015 for a new episode of Legal Straight Talk.
This is Beth.
Hi.
Oh, congratulations. When are you due?
I'm not pregnant.
Oh, look at that. Excuse me.
You're totally thin.
You look very sexy.
For life's bleachable moments, all it takes is 3/4 of a cup.
So we're talking about doctor education, and physicians are inherently good. They want to take care of you. But we need to do better for society. So,
And it's okay. You know, when we
It's
go
okay.
when we go to a GP, then something's wrong with your foot, they send you to a podiatrist, or your heart, they send you to a cardiologist. So everything is very, very specialized. But addiction presents across the board in all practices. So it's understandable why doctors may not understand addiction and opiate, prescribing. But it needs to be rectified.
I often hear in medical school that if they may only get an hour on addiction medicine when they're taking.
and pain management is not much better than that.
That's a subspecialty.
A veterinarian gets 70 hours on pain management of animals. So I think that we need to do better here. Last week we went to Albany, and it's a bill in the Assembly, A355.
What is that again?
A355.
Okay.
And that is for physician education. We are asking for 3 hours every 2 years, and the Medical Society is apparently saying that that's punitive. I live every day without my son. That's punitive. Avi lives every day without his son. Terry lives I could go on. Unfortunately, the list is way too long to name.
3,000 families on Long Island are living without their child.
Tomorrow
So-
morning, there'll be another family living
Yeah.
without a child.
Another family will be forever changed. And we can't go back and change that, but we should be able to move forward. So my feeling is, if a physician is dispensing narcotics, then you have to pass that education. You have to take that continuing ed. If you never prescribe, then opt out of prescribing. It's not, nobody's taking anything away from you. Again, there's a choice. With the choice comes a consequence. You want to be able to prescribe, then do it in the best way that you know how.
Medical professionals say they don't have the time. And I understand that time is a valuable commodity for all of us. However, there's always time to listen to the drug rep talk up the latest reincarnation of hydrocodone or oxycodone or some other medication. They can make 3 hours in 2 years. That is not an unreasonable amount of time.
That is not an unreasonable. My son wishes that he could have more time. He had 21 years and 50 weeks on this earth. So I do believe that that 3 hours every 2 years.
It's not a lot.
No.
Not a lot.
And the one thing about this bill, too, it's so many people are saying, what can we do? We're losing these young people. We're losing, not just young people, we're losing people to this epidemic. And they're saying, what can we do? What can we do to stop this? This bill sunsets in 4 years, which means it will go away. If it didn't work, it will go away. If it did work, we know that people will get back out there and say we need to do more. So this is something that we could really do, we could really try. And I think anyone listening to this show could call their local legislator and say that they know that there's a bill there that is waiting to be passed in Albany, and that they really would like to support the passage of that bill to give this a try.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And inherently, I think that, if you went to your local doctor, they're going to say, I would do that. That wouldn't be a problem for me. So, the Medical Society, I'm not really sure what their problem is. But they carry a lot of weight and a lot of power.
Yes, they do.
And last year, I do believe that the insurance companies didn't think that that bill was going to get passed. So this bill will get passed this year.
It will.
I know that, and for all the Michaels and Timmys and Thomases of the world, that bill will get passed, because I'm tired of holding parents' hands and belonging to a club that no parent should ever belong to.
Every person on Long Island and in the country deserves to have educated, correct answers from their doctor when asking a question about addiction.
Absolutely.
That's
And-
what they deserve. Everyone who's listening to this show, you owe it to yourself and your family.
And if
to
they
make
don't
sure
give
this-
you the answer, they should be smart enough just to say, I'm not sure. Let's find a doctor that
Right.
could appropriately care for this. Not, I don't take care of that, you're on your own.
You're on your own, and that's not okay.
That's not okay. That is not okay.
Last year, when we were trying to get the other bills passed, what we did is we made phone calls. It was really a campaign that was based on a lot of phone calls to a lot of senators and assembly people. And this year, we need the support with the assembly. And if someone out there doesn't know who their New York State Assembly person is, they can go to the New York State Assembly website. It's very simple to find your assembly person. You can call their office either in Albany or their local Long Island office. They can just say who they are, tell them that they're a constituent living in this area, and that they support the passage of,
A355,
thank you,
the
Linda.
physician education bill.
Yeah, because they believe it will save lives.
And they do not like phone calls. They do not like emails. So email them and call them often.
Often,
And
more
repeatedly,
often.
just all the time. And that's how, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's just how we have to always, and they work for us. So we have to put them to our agenda, enough with their agenda. Again, last year, Governor Cuomo readied this state for an Ebola crisis that never happened. Now, and I'm not criticizing that. We needed to be ready. But we are losing so many people in the state of New York that is unacceptable. So how can you ready the state for something that, why aren't we doing more? Why aren't we doing better?
Well, I think you talked about it earlier when we were talking about the shame of this disease. It's very difficult for people to come forward. It's difficult for families to come forward and say, I need help. But you know what? That stopping ourselves from coming forward is killing our kids. We really need to step out of ourselves and say, I need help, I need education. And there's a lot of events that are taking place across Long Island right now that are educating parents and family members and the community at large on this epidemic and what's happening.
Well, I'm proud to say that Claudia and Nancy are the co-chairmans of Families in Support of Treatment, which is an organization that Anthony Rizzuto founded and is the executive director of. And we are pulling families together so that the families have a voice in this disease, because the siblings have voices that often go unheard, the parents, your mind, someone that doesn't struggle with this in their household cannot appreciate the madness and the chaos that ensues. And for an outsider to say, well, they should just stop, they can't just stop. Oh, just take their cell phone away. I don't know how many people tried to tell, just take his cell phone away. Well, of course, why didn't I think of that? You know, he's injecting heroin and you think he's worried about his cell phone. You know, the education is not there for every member of the family and every member of the community. We need to go back to community parenting too. If you see somebody else's child doing something wrong, or you think that they're doing something wrong, whether that other parent gets upset or not really doesn't matter. Because if you end up saving a life or changing the direction in which someone goes, then you've done a great job. And if that other parent doesn't talk to you again, it's okay, because you can look yourself in the mirror. That's how I always
You're absolutely right. They
think about it.
precipitated a discussion, if nothing else, by one parent calling another parent about their child. It's gonna precipitate a conversation between the parent and the child about addiction.
Or it
and
may
that's-
just plant a seed.
plant the seed.
And the parent will look and say,
And you know
I
what?
never thought of that before. You know, he is, you know, and just to start, the brain, you know, it's very hard to comprehend that your little angel,
Right.
because all kids are good.
They are good.
All kids are born good. You know, we're not condemning any child. We're not.
And
But
there's
the
nothing
face of
to be
addiction
ashamed of.
has changed.
Yeah.
It is the
Yeah.
high school cheerleader. It is the football
Football
player.
star.
It is all of
The
those.
Rhodes Scholar. It's
Yes.
these kids that
It's
are dying.
the kid in the band, in the
right.
art club. It's anyone.
It's the 15-year-old grandson. 2 weeks ago, we had a FIST event, and one of the grandmothers came, and she's been someone who advocated with us last year for the
Yes.
passage of the bills. And this woman right now is recovering from cancer, and she came out on a Saturday night just to say, I'm here, and to let people know that that it's important enough that even when you're recovering from cancer, to show up at an event so other people see that you're there.
Absolutely. And you stand in the gap for people struggling with the disease. And that's what we need to do. And there is no stigma.
There is
for-
no stigma. And as we go towards talking about Avi, I just want to say, in all the thousands of kids I've worked with, no young adult wants to be a net drug addict. That is not their intention. If they could just stop, they would just stop. These kids
want to stop.
They want to, but they can't. And the despair that these kids struggle with is overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. And when they, now hopefully moving forward as of April 1st in New York State anyway, with the access to treatment. But prior to that, so many were not able to get into treatment. And they did take their lives.
Yes, they
And, detoxing from opiates is it's excruciating. And comfort meds, they do need to be monitored. You wouldn't do that to your worst enemy. You wouldn't do that.
We treat our dogs and cats better than we treat our kids.
And
In terms of medical care, it's frightening.
but the insurance companies yet
That's the
said
insurance companies. It's a broken
you can't
system.
die from
Right.
opiate withdrawal, so go home and do that on your own.
And that's not true, because when you are withdrawing, you can start with the vomiting, and you can aspirate your own vomit, and you can die. So,
And you'll do anything in the world you can do to get your next
to get your
fix.
thing, to make the pain go away. The pain is so, because we have opiate receptors, not just in our brain, but throughout our body. So when they're talking kicking, literally the legs are kicking, the spine is rocking, their entire body is in such excruciating discomfort.
And some
Who's
people
gonna
will
put up with
say,
that?
well, they did that to themselves, and they
You know
didn't.
what?
They didn't.
They made
No
a bad
one-
choice.
They made one bad choice.
They decided to
one
experiment
time,
like
yes.
young people do.
Yep. Absolutely, absolutely. And I know in closing, I want to talk a little bit about Avi, and each week I want to bring one person who's been lost to the disease of addiction, and just for their parents to remember them the way that they were. So Avi Israel, his son Michael, was a charismatic, could light up a room with his smile, the youngest of 3 sisters, so there were 4 children in total. He has 3 nephews and 1 niece. And Avi and Julie Israel miss that child just like I miss Thomas every day, every second of every day. Unfortunately, Michael had Crohn's disease, which in and of itself is excruciatingly painful disease. And he was prescribed into his addiction. And Avi so generously sent me his son's last note, because when Avi's son Michael could not get into treatment, he went into the back bedroom and shot half his face off, quite honestly. And it is very graphic, but this is where our children are being led to. They would rather die than try to make it through this disease without treatment. So this is his last note. So this may be my last testament. If I don't wake up, I don't care. If I do, that's okay too. I have not known any happiness in this life other than from artificial means. I don't care to continue going through the motion of what has been nothing but a disappointment. I'm only sorry for being so selfish to my mom and dad, who tried to give me so much in this world. I'm sorry, but it just wasn't enough. I wasn't able to find the means to survive, and this is not your fault, but mine. I guess I didn't look hard enough. Maybe in the next life I can find happiness. On June 4th will mark Avi and Julie's 4th year without their son. And in today's world, it's just unacceptable. The child knew nothing but pain from his disease, was prescribed into the disease of addiction, and then was told, I can't help you. The doctor that got him there said, I can't help you with this disease anymore. So they were left with no place to turn. And when Michael could not get into treatment, he couldn't go on anymore. And more people than not will take their own lives when, pushed into that situation. It's it's a disease that looks to isolate, that looks to take you away from everything you love, and it likes to keep you there, and it tells you bad things about yourself. And we can't have this continue anymore. We need, we need physician education. We need the whole society to come together. We can't legislate our way out of it. We can't arrest our way out of it. But we can, all of us, come together to start to prevent the disease before, or I shouldn't say prevent, because that would mean that I guess no one would ever use a substance a day in their life. But we need education about substances that people put in their body. Anything, ladies, that you want to add?
The one thing I want to say about Michael's story is that Avi could have taken this anger and he could have sued the doctors, because there were 3 doctors that prescribed him into addiction. And Avi said, those doctors were good doctors. They did not mean this to happen. They just didn't know. And Avi has been one of the leaders in this prescription bill that's out there now to get the education for the doctors that's necessary.
He's been a leader in iStop.
Yeah.
He's been a leader with the Good Sam law. Dial 911. That's okay. Nobody's going to get into trouble. Again, this hour goes so quickly. I look forward to seeing everybody next week. You can Facebook me on Thomas's Hope Foundation. Private message me if you need any help. The LICAD number I will put up on my website. And please, anybody that needs help, I can help point you to a lot of great professionals that are in this field. Just reach out. There's help, there's hope, there's recovery. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you, Claudia and Nancy.
Thank you for having
Linda.
us.
Oh, you guys were great. You guys are always great.
Thanks.